Good afternoon to all of you viewers out there. I'm Camden from the podcast Getting Your Shit Together. Pretty great title. Anyways, I see you stumbled upon this video, and, well, hopefully, when you watch this episode, you can find something useful, something that you guys can use in your daily life. So make sure you sit back, get that popcorn, get that water, get that soda, whatever you want to get, and enjoy the content.
Bro, you're recording without me?
Yeah. See you guys. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. Today, we're doing a little bit of a different topic. We're bringing something new to the stage. Would you say, Thomas?
Absolutely.
And what would that be?
So we're going to talk about genetic modification.
And specifically in what aspect?
Well, I had the idea that we do it in two aspects, but first, I think we should talk about genetically modifying humans, like the CRISPR technology.
Right. So we bring this to the table here. We're talking about something a little bit controversial.
That's what the website said.
Because people have a lot of different views, a lot of different takes on this. But, if you've been around, you've probably heard about CRISPR, which is a technology that's used for specifically pinpointing, genetic code, DNA, and modifying it to get specific traits out of people, right?
Wait, didn't you tell me about some lady who had a really high IQ that was genetically modified?
What I did tell you is that, currently CRISPR is, for the most part, banned. So you can't really use it on people at the moment. But we're here to talk about if we should use it on people. And so there was this dude, I think he was in China. This might have been what you were talking about. He genetically modified twins who were in the womb, and CRISPR, which I'll let you guys know, give you some insight. It's pretty much mostly used for, embryos, young, not even born children, right? So that way, when they are born, they get these genetic modifications, and I think it's a lot more difficult, some aspect like that with adults, but we're mainly talking about in children. So genetically modifying children before they're born. So that means when they do come out, they are a certain way. That's the whole point here.
Right.
But this dude in China, he genetically modified twins, right? So what he did is he made it so that they were less susceptible to HIV. So he did do something that was pretty great. He gave them the ability to live life with a decreased chance of getting, HIV, stuff like that. And people freaked out about this, because he didn't tell anyone. He's just like, guys, check out what I did. I genetically modified these people using CRISPR. So it was a pretty illegal move. I don't know if anything happened to him. But he totally just went off the bat like that and just like, you know what? I'm just going to use this technology right now.
Huh. Well, I'm thinking about it. And would it be possible to genetically modify someone after they're born?
CRISPR, I'm not 100% sure. I believe that you can.
How would that work?
Yeah, actually, that's a great freaking question. Because, with children, and that's especially what CRISPR is primarily designed for, I think, was genetically modifying children. But with adults, it's kind of hard because they've already got pretty much all their genetic code laid out for them. They've been using it for most of their life, stuff like that. So changing it, I don't even know how that would really work. Because if you tried it, do you think you could mess up something now? You genetically modify a person who's already out there, who's already, they're out of the oven, per se. And if you do it with a kid, they're still in the oven baking. So adding this extra ingredient isn't going to do much. But it's like you take a cake, you add an extra ingredient to it. I don't know how that's going to turn out. But honestly, there probably is I think you could potentially use CRISPR for adults. But we're here to like primarily go over our different points in this, right? And you would say you're for. Like, what are your thoughts on this?
I haven't decided yet, but I would argue for genetic modification.
In specifically children,
Well,
because
it
it's a
has to
hard one.
it has to be, as far as I can see, it has to be in the embryos. So
Mm-hmm.
in the next generation, maybe we should do that.
Okay, so you are saying like with further generations, we should be able to genetically modify them, like change their
Yeah, it's
code.
it's a hard question though, because if you genetically modify someone to be built for a specific job and they don't want to do that job, that's a problem.
Oh, that is a problem.
So we'd have to do some more research. We'd have to know the system inside and out. But I think down the line we should genetically modify everyone
Mm-hmm.
until we're all built for a job.
For a job.
Yeah, so it's comparative advantage. I mean, I guess you could like genetically modify everyone so they're just all the smartest and strongest and fastest, but you might want to have smaller people so they can get in tight spaces.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why you would need that, but
Well, I mean, we can break this down. So let's say if you genetically modified everyone to be the best, like absolutely the strongest, absolutely the smartest, in that aspect, is anyone really going to be the smartest, the strongest? Are
yeah,
they really even going to be strong or smart by that standpoint?
well, I think there's two possibilities I can see. Either they'll all be the same intelligence and strength, or there are natural factors that make them slightly above each other.
Mm-hmm.
So there might be some variation, but if there is, it's not going to be much, I think.
Because I mean, imagine getting rid of all the variation in the world, right? Then what happens? How are we going to develop from there?
Then we're actually all created equal, like literally.
Like literally.
And that I think that's a good thing.
Well, now that you say that, I mean, I don't know how bad it sounds to say this, but would that also be a bad thing? I mean, if we had no differences, when I say equal, like, I mean, obviously, I should establish right now that I mean, like, everyone has the same ability to do something. So, like, if someone, anyone, doesn't matter who you are, of any category, you want to do this, anyone of any category should be able to do that same thing, right?
Yeah.
But if we were all equal in the aspect that we thought the exact same way, so if we were all intelligent, our intelligence levels were all the same, I have a feeling like there wouldn't be anything new. So,
Um,
like, if we all, like, there's people who have different intelligence, right? There's people who are way, way smarter than me, right? I'm definitely not the smartest, you know, person in the world. And that's a good thing because that means that the people who are smarter than me are going to start in doing some crazy stuff. And I mean, I might not be the smartest either, but I know that in my head, I can cook up something kind of crazy, something new. But if we're all the same intelligence, could we potentially all start thinking in the same manner? And if that happens, if everyone's brains are wired the same way, we wouldn't have anything new. If we had nothing new, we would not advance.
well,
We would kind of flatline.
that's another question that rises. How does creativity work? Creativity is what brings the new things into the world.
Right. So GMO, like genetically modifying people,
Well, if
would probably mess up the entire aspect of creativity as a whole.
we don't understand creativity, so there's no saying what'll happen. But it could be that the creative ones will come out on top because that's the only natural factor that they have anymore.
Hmm.
But maybe we do understand creativity. I know I don't, but the biological side of creativity, I'm not quite sure. Once we understand it, maybe we could make everyone super creative, but that's pretty hard. Anyone who's more intelligent is definitely going to be slightly more creative, as a byproduct, but creativity and intelligence are not one and the same. So I don't know how that would work.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to put creativity and discipline on opposite sides, but they're two different strategies that you could use. So I think with little variation, you would still have creative people and disciplined people.
But if we all were the same, if we all were thinking the same way,
Right.
would any of that really even apply?
No, I don't think so. But if we are thinking the same, it might be advantage. If we're all smarter, and we're thinking the same way, that's a good trade-off. Especially since now it's borderline hive mind. Don't you think a hive mind would be pretty good if everyone's individual minds were connected?
I mean, we would be a unit, that's for sure, and that we would probably get a lot done in that aspect. But if that was the case, I think what would happen, we'd probably achieve a lot, right?
Uh-huh.
But in that way, I think we would achieve our roof, like a point where we couldn't break, much quicker. And if we weren't different, we'd probably find, or maybe we'd never find our roof, and maybe they would. You know what I mean by roof? Like the furthest we could possibly advance.
Well, it's hard to see where that is because
Exactly.
the more creative people, because they're more intelligent, will be able to find other ideas. Like you could start combining our DNA with animal DNA,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe that'll
Real life furries.
Oh my gosh,
No.
I regret saying that. Thanks, Cameron.
Well, I mean, if we were a hive mind, what I mean by that is if we were a hive mind, we would have a selective goal, all of us, right? And that would be pretty great. But we would achieve that goal, and what else would come?
Another goal.
Would there be another goal, though?
We're not all powerful, are we? Even at our roof?
If we were all a genetically modified connected hive mind like this, like super hypothetical future.
And it's borderline hive mind you, because we're not actually telepathic yet.
Right.
So we're just thinking the same. And I don't think you'd end up thinking the same, because we'd all be in different environments.
So that means a true hive mind wouldn't be possible.
Well,
through genetic, I mean, through CRISPR at least.
In that aspect. But there would in fact be variation because your environment becomes part of your identity. And not everyone can have identical environments. So there will be variation.
Well, if we were a hive mind, we definitely would have the same environment. If we all thought the same, we'd all have the same tastes, we'd all have the same perspective of fashion and stuff like that. So we design our house the same, architecture would probably be the same, clothing styles would all be the same. So your environment everywhere you go would be the same, which means that everyone would think the same.
But think about it this way. If we're raising the next generation to be the same, then each generation is going to be raised by not modified parents, and each of those parents will pass on their nurture. So nurture is still a factor.
I see what you're saying. So there is the cutoff of when everyone would start to be genetically the same.
Yeah.
But the people before then would still be able to pass on their own, cup of tea.
Yeah, so there will be variation, and I think that the variation, it's questionable. It might go away the further you go down the generations.
Yeah, I think it would, especially because, if we are all thinking the same, there's probably going to be a thing that we follow, right? So there'd probably be one person, one model. Maybe it's not even a person. Maybe it's, who knows? And so we're all following the guidance of what this thing is. Over time, if we kept sticking to that road, the cup of tea, shall we say, from the generations before that weren't the same would fade off, because the voice of this now guiding presence would overpower what the former different generations that were not modified would say and think, right?
What do you mean by guiding presence exactly?
I'm meaning if we were all thinking the same manner. I'm going on the aspect that we all have a guideline that we follow.
Oh, like a collective unconscious.
Yes, a collective unconscious. Now, if we all were thinking the same way, so we're pretty much all husks in that manner, I would say we'd all be like husks. I think before everyone changes, we would probably be guided by something or someone, and then we would go into dystopia. I'm bringing up super hypothetical stuff right now, but I'm talking about if everyone was genetically modified to think the same way, there's someone or something that is doing that. And that same someone or something that is doing that is also going to be the ones who tell us how to act because they're making us act the same. So if we're acting the exact same way, all of us, from one source, that source being like how we're born, how we're modified before we leave. Oh, I'm not describing this too great. I'm thinking of it as if we're all genetically the same, if we're all like a hive mind. Imagine it as we're all troopers, right? We all go through the same process, the exact same way, and it's all created and led by one thing. That thing would be what is telling us how to live our life.
And that one thing is the lack of biological difference.
Yes.
So all of our biology is the same. All of our nature would be the same. And that's another question. Would it really? Because
we have gone down the rabbit hole of transitions here.
Each mother is going to have their own nature. So how much of it would you have to modify? And how much of it can we modify?
If each mother had their own nature.
Yeah, well, because you have your baby, and it's going to be a fully natural baby, and it's all of the mother's and the father's genes. And then you go in and modify it. How much of it can you modify? Can you modify all of it?
I mean, if we were already going down this generation after generation of being modified the same way, then every baby would be the same.
I think eventually we would split up into different nations that have different beliefs, we'll say.
So you're saying that maybe there wouldn't be such thing as a total global, like, because when I was thinking we all are genetically the same, I'm saying the human race is of this category and everyone inside of it is the exact same way. But you're saying that we'd split off so that humanity would be essentially put into tribes.
Yeah.
Or nations, because that's way bigger than tribes.
Yeah, when we're on our way to all being identical, there's going to be people who believe that everyone should be this way, and people who should believe that everyone should be that way. So we're going to split up into different tribes, and eventually one will have to win, right? But
so one will be the genetically superior group, if that's the case.
That's also questionable, because that's what's happening right now in the world. We have different groups, different countries, different religions that are kind of fighting against each other for their beliefs, their philosophies, and none of them have come out on top.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, at least for now.
For now, but people have tried it, like Hitler. He had low resources, but he did a lot.
He did do a lot.
But he still failed.
I think especially because he failed, because everyone else teamed up against him at the last minute. Eventually, everyone was like, "No, we got to put a stop to this dude."
So it's literally your tribe against the world. Because once you get powerful enough, they're all gonna team up against you.
Yeah.
And then. Yeah.
I mean, that's if we were all genetically, yeah, okay. But back to our main point here, should we genetically modify children? And we're all talking, we went down the hole of everyone being the same.
Right.
So if we're talking about intelligence-wise, what about physically? Because if we're going to have people who can be strongest of all, if everyone is the exact same strength, right, I feel like just as creatures, as biological nature, we always strive for the strongest, right?
Yeah,
And there's always something for the strongest. But if we're all the exact same, and so if we were to go up against each other with the exact same strength, exact same approach, even as well, what determines what a powerful person would be? So, what determines a leader?
okay. This is an attractive topic for me.
Okay.
What you're talking about, everyone wants to be the strongest. That's a dominance hierarchy.
Yeah.
People organize themselves into hierarchies out of dominance. And with chimps, the leading factor of dominance is strength, but their strength doesn't vary enough so that one chimp could take down two smaller chimps. The two smaller chimps would win. So there's another factor, and that's empathy. The one who can negotiate and speak well, communicate well, and have empathy, he's going to be on top, given that he has the muscle.
Mm-hmm. And well, if someone, I was gonna say, if someone stronger wanted to take that one down and didn't show mercy, I was gonna say maybe he could.
Well, a tyrant, yeah, he could take him down, but a tyrant doesn't last long because
That's
two
true.
other chimps are going to come up and take him down.
Especially
And
because if you're on the side of the ethos, what you were talking about there,
yeah,
you're most likely going to have people who will be on your side if a tyrant does try to strike you down.
right. And a tyrant rules by fear and maybe negotiation. So the tyrant's going to have his team of guys and try and like order everyone around, scatter them, make them feel like they're alone. And that's the only way that he could stay up. But if everyone was still genetically modifying people, and they stopped doing specifically strength and also adding in some ethos, then eventually you're gonna start a rebellion. And that's kind of how it's been with all the tyranny pretty much ever.
But
You either have
if
a
we have
rebellion
if
or
we
you have
have
a leader.
rebelling people, how is that going to work?
If we
Because
have a
we're the
what?
same strength. If we have people who try to go against this major force, but we're all of the same strength level.
Well, there's gonna be people who like order and like tyranny, but dislike this guy. So there's two teams here. There's the top guy and his team, and then there's everyone else. And everyone else outnumbers the top guy, but the top guy has more control, and that's why he's staying on top. But once everyone else start communicating, the top guy's done.
I see what you're saying now. Well, in that aspect, okay. All right, it's registering in my mind right now, but that we're going into situations super far down the road, right?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking like towards the beginning, we're gonna have the people who are more genetically superior to others. So here's another topic that came to mind. Imagine if you need to be a certain way in order to say even get certain like a job. So imagine there's the people who weren't genetically modified, right? That means that there's going to be a lot of people who either spend their whole life in low paying work like jobs or no job at all. And they're pretty much screwed over because they would be a natural person. You see what I'm saying there? Like
Yeah.
we would essentially eradicate natural selection as a whole. Natural selection pretty much would never be the same the moment CRISPR becomes introduced to our society. And that's also another reason why I think it's currently illegal, because CRISPR, we can't modify people yet. It's not common. We cannot do it now. The technology's out there. We have the ability, but we have not pressed the button. We haven't committed and said, "All right, let's do it." And I think one of the main reasons is because the moment we do this, we are completely destroying one of the founding fathers, the founding things of nature. That's what natural selection was, right? Because natural selection made it so that only the strongest persevere. But now, if everyone's the strongest, if everyone's the smartest, then what differentiates people? And on top of that, how do you combat something if you can't control it? Because I feel like in natural selection, people had the ability to fight, and organisms had the ability to fight to be at the top. But if we have genetic modification, it's pretty much you're either born onto this planet with a good card and you're going to live well. And if you have a bad card, instead of right now, if you're born with a bad card, if you're in a bad circumstance, there is ways that you can turn around and move your way up the dominance hierarchy and even go to the top. Like some of the most successful people that have ever existed started at the bottom of the dominance hierarchy. But if we make it so that people are the strongest of all time, in fact, stronger than any human has ever been by genetic modification, they're just going to be born that way. And then the people who aren't born that way won't have anything to stand up against. They won't be able to do anything. So if we do this with children, we do this with people, we are completely eradicating the concept of the dominance hierarchy, because you're either born a certain way and you will rule over your whole life. It's almost a guarantee. And then there's going to be the people who are born naturally who can't combat this insanely powerful force that has never existed before, that's not natural. How would someone combat against that?
Okay, so I have a model in my mind. You have the natural people, and then they start a generation of modified people. The modified people absolutely mow over the natural people. So the natural people struggle to survive. And when they die, it's all modified people. The modified people are locked into their hierarchy, like you said, based off of the genetically modified contents. But, as we all know, strong men create good times. And good times create weak men. And weak men create bad times.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
Bad times are going to create more strong men. So, even if we do genetically modify people to lock the dominance hierarchy, it's going to end up cycling through and just maybe even it won't even last. I think it might just be like a jump in progress. And then we'll go back to the genes. But there will be less variation overall.
Right.
Which might not be a good thing. Because here's another thing. Most people want their children to be very similar to how they are. So there is still probably going to be a lot of variation. Because like culture, and you want everyone to be the strongest and the smartest and all that. But they're still going to look different, and they're still going to act different, because they want their children to have their beliefs and their culture, because that's how they believe life should go. So there still will be variation, and even if we get everyone locked into the hierarchy, it'll reboot itself, and it'll be a jump in progress for humanity.
But in that situation that you just mentioned, you also stated that there would be kind of a division point where natural people don't exist anymore and it's all up to the modified people.
Right.
So that right there would be pretty much a mass extinction event.
Well, I'm not saying that the modified people are going to kill them off. I think they'll survive.
Are you just saying maybe over time there's going to be more and more modified people to the point of where natural people eventually die because it's their time to leave, it's their time to go, and then we're just left with the modified people in that sense?
But the last natural people will struggle, which is not going to be a happy sight. But,
But if there is this situation where we have the modified stronger people, uh, I almost would say it would be inevitable for the natural people to want to rise up and end it because it we're humans. And this is an interpretation that I've had that some people can argue with, it's debatable. But I really think that as humans with a consciousness, we know what we want, we know what we're striving for. So I think that the purpose of humanity is to be free, is to find a better side, like a greener, what's crap? Greener side of the hill. Like it's greener on the other side of the hill. We want to find that freedom, really. I'm struggling to find metaphors here or analogies. But that's what I think the purpose of humanity is. So if the natural humans are grouped up and their freedom is being locked by people who are genetically modified, as humans, they're going to want to retaliate against that. So I don't think modified people are just going to slowly come in and the natural people are going to slowly come out. I think it's going to get to the point where there will be an all-out war against modified and natural people. And I mean, if the modified people are severely modified, they're going to pretty much win because the odds would be almost incalculable. The people that it would probably take 100 natural people to beat one modified person. And I guess I shouldn't be too certain about this because nothing's impossible. But I do think that there would be a massive, massive fight between modified and normal people. So when the cutoff occurs, if either natural people are left over or modified people are left over, I don't think that the curve is going to happen naturally. I think that it is going to result in a mass extinction event of one or the other because I think conflict between these two people is inevitable because they are getting in the way of each other. Modified people are going to be able to take all the resources that they want and they'll have the ability to take the resources of natural people. So what are the natural people going to do about it? They're going to retaliate. And the modified people, knowing that they have a obstacle in the way of their abundance, are also going to fight for it. And so at that point, through the smoke and ash is going to be a winner. That's how I think it's going to go down. If we get down this road of heavy modified people over time and people who are not modified, I really think that there will be a mass conflict between these two people and probably one of the greatest wars or conflicts in human history. That is pretty much going to separate people. I mean, think about Neanderthals and Homo sapiens. There's a reason Neanderthals don't exist anymore and Homo sapiens do.
Okay, but once the freedom fighters come out, and the modified people aren't so proud about being modified, so they don't show it off anymore, how do you tell the difference between a modified person and a non-modified person?
And that's actually something that would be difficult because, I mean, I guess it really depends. We don't know what in that distant future, we don't really know what they'd look like. We don't really know what they'd be, really. Because if we're talking about humans who are so genetically modified, they are the smartest and strongest and fastest of any and all humans to have ever existed. I don't think we can honestly conceptualize that right now. I don't think that's a reality that we can handle. Because the strongest, smartest, fastest humans currently are still very much mortal. And if we genetically modified them to the point of, I mean, as much as we could, that might be something so powerful that we can't even comprehend. And that would be everyone. So the idea of what this fully genetically modified person is I don't know what it would be like. And I don't know if it would be so great that we'd be able to determine what they're like.
And here's the thing. These modified people, they're going to be scattered throughout like the world. They're not going to be in an organized nation. They're going to be among everyone.
So you think that these modified people can live within the natural people and there could be peace and harmony?
Yeah, I think they'd go straight up to the top of the dominance hierarchy,
But they could almost be essentially freedom fighters as well. But I mean that could be a reality. But the thing is, if CRISPR is available to everyone, then everyone's gonna get modified because if you have the ability to, why would you not want to?
well, it's probably going to cost something. So people in poverty are going to just not have it.
But exactly, that's gonna push them even lower down the social hierarchy, down the dominance hierarchy. I mean, both of them. It's going to push them even further down. And then the successful people are going to get pushed even further up. So that means we're going to make an even bigger gap.
There's a reason poor people are poor. It's not just, most of the time, it's not just, yeah, I lost all my money. It's, I lost it gambling, smoking, I have an addiction.
So there is a reason for their poverty.
Yeah, I will say there are some really nice homeless people who will get a job if you let them. But
because there are people who will fight to get out of their circumstance.
Yeah, honestly, maybe even most of them are that way because the ones who had an addiction might have died off already.
That's true.
Yeah, that's not a very good point.
But that is the thing, because there's so many different possibilities that we just talked about that you can't really predict unless we actually introduce CRISPR into the equation. So I think that's why we're so hesitant. And that's really up to the viewers, what you guys think. Should we modify children? Should we introduce CRISPR into our lives and modify people? Because the moment we do, we're going to go down a route that's so complex, so unpredictable, we really don't know how it's going to come out on the other end.
Oh, wait. Here's an idea. What if we do separate a nation of modified people? A small one. So we can just see how it happens.
Well, if we just put them into their own nation, I think eventually their ambitions are going to rise up to the point where they're going to want to be the most powerful.
That's what we're expecting, but there's a lot more...
Natural people? Yeah, but what happens over time? When they do get large amounts, because obviously they're going to reproduce, and we'll reproduce too, but what happens if it gets to the point where they reproduce so excessively? Like, let's say they're able to modify the amount of kids they have. Ooh. So what if they're reproducing in larger amounts than we're able to reproduce? They wouldn't even really be... Would they even really be humans at that point? Imagine if we just, all right, go off on your own. And imagine if they could still keep reproducing modified children, right? Over time, imagine the beings they'd be able to make, if you can even call them human.
So what you do is you disable reproduction.
You just don't allow them to have kids.
So you have a...
But who's going to want to go down that route? Like,
well,
if you're like, hey, who wants to go down a modified country? No one's going to be like, yeah, I'll go there. Oh, but I can't. I'm just going to die here now? I don't know if I want to do that, man. I don't know who's going to be interested in that.
Well, it's going to be, the children are going to be born like that. And
they're going to be born.
That does seem like a disservice. But if we're going to test, that's going to be the only way we can do it.
Okay.
And honestly, they'd be seen as heroes if they took it on full force. Because it's like, if you use it as an excuse to not do anything, then yeah, they're not going to be seen very highly. But if you use it, and if you succeed despite it, then they're going to be seen as a freaking hero, man.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's all I've got for today's episode. I don't have anything else to add.
Yeah, me neither.
All right, everyone, hopefully you enjoyed this a little bit different episode of the podcast. And We hope that you have a great rest of your day. Make sure to like and subscribe and follow up for new episodes. You have a good one.